Welcome to Team ypww Lesson 10. I do not own the rights to this music. Today's topic is praying and the answer is no. The lesson text is coming out of Ephesians chapter 1 verses 17 through 20, 2 Samuel chapter 12 verses 13 through 24. The memory verse is Ephesians chapter 1 verse 18. I will read the King James Version first and then the New International Version. The eyes of your understanding being enlightened, that ye may know what is the hope of his calling, and what the riches of the glory of his inheritance in the saints. The New International Version. I pray that the eyes of your heart may be enlightened, in order that you may know the hope to which he has called you, the riches of his glorious inheritance in his holy people. The key for today's lesson: pray through. The focus for today's lesson: disappointments and realignments. It is disappointing when we pray for something or someone and the results are not what we wanted. It is important that we don't become overwhelmingly discouraged during these times. It is okay for you to be sad, disappointed, and grieved about not getting your prayer requests answered affirmatively. However, it is not okay for you to stay sad for multiple years after the disappointment occurred. This type of prolonged sadness is detrimental to every area of your life. Continual grieving is not the will of God for you. Teen listeners, although more difficult in some cases, you are still encouraged to move forward by faith. Our Christian proclivity must be: I trust God in every situation. You are challenged to, in this lesson, to make this proclamation your statement of default, intuitive, automatic answer. Using this declaration as soon as possible ushers you to the next blessing that God has planned for your life. Sometimes our prayers don't align with the will of God, so He has to answer no. Let's learn to regroup as soon as possible. Continue to pray and ask God to help you to accept His answer. We want you to move forward in faith. The foundational premise for our next two lessons is pray through. We will discuss the prayers of two different kings of Israel. God answered the prayers of each king differently. Let's start with King David. He experienced a real dilemma when his son became extremely ill. Lying prostrate on the floor all night, he prayed fervently for 7 nights. He did not sleep in his bed during this time. He prayed for God to heal his child. Despite his earnest and sincere petition, God's answer was no, and the child died. At the death of the child, the king's servants were afraid to tell him. They knew he was already devastated because of his withdrawn behavior. When he received the news about the death of his child, King David gives us a sterling example of how to bounce back when God answers no to our prayers. When King David finally received the tragic news, he got up, took a bath, and anointed himself with oil. He put on fresh clothes and went to the house of the Lord and began to worship God. I believe that King David prayed a prayer of detoxification. He prayed words like these: God, please cleanse my mind of the horrible feelings from this experience. Detox my mind, memory, and spirit of the devastating effects of this tragedy so that I can return to the assignment you have given me for my life. God, I don't want this event of great distress to destroy the rest of my life. He then returned to his home with a renewed passion for living. King David shows us that we should not run away from God when problems come. In direct contrast, our problems should propel us into God's presence to ask Him for divine guidance. Trusting God for the outcome of your prayer petitions can sometimes be difficult. Getting a no from God when your desire was to get a yes can be devastating. especially when you see your friends being blessed with the very exact thing that you are praying for and you have not received it yet. Sometimes, when you experience a horrible event or a great disappointment, a well known phenomenon may begin to happen in your life as well. Negative and bad experiences can cause you to feel discouraged about everything else positive that is happening in your life. On the surface, everything in your life may seem to come to a screeching halt. We sometimes ask God, why did this happen to me? Here's the divine advice on this dilemma. Don't allow the distress in one area of your life to destroy the rest of your life. Like King David in our lesson, you can bounce back from any tragedy and be the teens that God has called you to be. David knew the power of next. He knew that God always has a next when he tells us no. After the death of his son, God blesses him with another son, Solomon. God loved Solomon and allowed him to be his father's successor to the throne. Solomon was selected to be the next king of Israel. David was delighted about the future of his son. The questions for today's lesson. Number one, what should be the attitudinal response of teen believers when God does not answer their prayer in the manner they hope that He would? Number two, trusting God can be difficult when your prayer petitions are answered with a no. Share with your class your experience of getting a prayer answered no. How did you survive the disappointment? Number three, King David's response to disappointment is the primary point of this lesson. What characteristic about David did you like best in our lesson? The end. God bless you and thank you for joining me today.